So, I want you to imagine a guy, right? Just like hitting the gym, but he's not just working out. He's tracking his weight obsessively.
Yeah, like meal by meal.
Exactly. Meal by meal, stepping on the scale until he hits exactly 92 kilograms, which is, it's about 202 pounds of just solid muscle.
Right. And, the wild part is he's not doing this for his health.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like a competitive bodybuilder or anything. He is literally doing this because some anonymous forum poster, some guy on the internet told him that at that specific weight, women will literally be able to smell his testosterone.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just like emitting this invisible chemical cloud.
Right. And that this cloud is, the only real secret to human attraction.
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. If you're listening to this, you probably already know that the landscape of modern dating advice is just utterly chaotic.
It really is. It's a mess.
It's a total mess. But to understand how we actually got here, we have to look backward. So today we are unpacking this highly influential and frankly deeply controversial piece of early internet subculture history.
Yeah, we are stepping way back. Into the early to mid 2000s.
The dial-up era.
Exactly, the dial-up era. Those glowing CRT monitors, the message boards where anonymity just sort of bred some of the most radical sociological theories of the decade.
Right, because people could say literally anything.
Right, and specifically, we are looking at this really extensive translated compilation of writings by an anonymous user who just went by the name Pook. And the compilation we have today is called Pookun Kitabi, or translated, The Book of Pook.
Right. And I mean, anyone familiar with the history of those old So Suave forums or just, the broader evolution of the men's self-improvement space online knows that Pook is essentially a foundational architect here.
Oh, absolutely. He laid the groundwork.
Yeah. Long before the massive YouTube channels or like the algorithmic TikTok advice we see now, or even the mainstreaming of what we call the red pill philosophy, was Pook.
Just typing away in the dark.
Exactly. Anonymously typing out these sprawling, deeply philosophical manifestos that honestly completely rewired how thousands of men viewed human attraction.
And, our objective here today is to really look at the architecture of his arguments.
Yeah.
We want to dissect the concepts, the really intense analogies he uses, and these very specific raw gender essentialist views presented in this text.
Right, because we're not here to take a political side or anything.
No, not at all. To understand why a cultural phenomenon resonates, you can't just judge it. You have to take it apart like an engine. We want to understand the exact mechanics of Pook's logic.
Yeah, and precisely why it became basically the gospel for so many guys who were really struggling in the dating market back then.
Exactly. So let's look at the environment Pook was operating in, right?
Yeah.
Because to understand a rebel, you kind of have to understand the empire he's rebelling against.
Right. What was the status quo?
Well, in the early 2000s, the mainstream PUA, the pickup artist community, was at its absolute peak.
Oh, yeah. The fuzzy hats and everything.
Yeah. You had men flooding into these forums looking for a cure to their loneliness. And the solution they were being handed was essentially like a video game cheat code.
That is exactly what it felt like. It was the era of speed seduction.
Right.
Like, the prevailing dogma was that human attraction could be hacked, just completely hacked through canned routines, neurolinguistic programming, and these, rigid physical escalation formulas.
Yeah, the PUA community basically treated social interaction as this purely mechanical input-output system.
Like a vending machine.
Exactly like that. The idea was, you memorize this specific psychological script, you perform these exact micro-calibrations of your body language, and boom, you will output attraction.
Right. And Pook, he looks at this mechanical approach. He looks at these guys obsessively reciting NLP scripts in front of their bathroom mirrors, and he completely rejects it.
He hates it.
He does. He argues that trying to memorize a script doesn't make you a master of seduction. It literally turns you into a robot. And he illustrates this with this brilliant, just massive metaphor about this guy named Manuel, the Spanish guy.
Oh, the Manuel metaphor is structurally just brilliant because it directly attacks a psychological crutch that the whole PUA community was relying on.
Right.
In the text, Manuel represents the literal manuals. The rule books, the ebooks, the guides that all these men were basically worshiping.
Yeah, Pook paints this really vivid picture. He describes Manuel sitting on a throne, surrounded by all these desperate followers, and Manuel just hands down these arbitrary, super rigid rules.
Rules like, don't talk on the phone for more than 20 minutes.
Right, or always wait exactly 3 days before calling, or never lean in when you speak. And the young man in Pook's story, he just diligently memorizes every single one of Manuel's commands.
He treats it like absolute law.
He does. And he implements them flawlessly. And the twist here is that he actually starts seeing some success. Like, the rules kind of work initially.
Right, but Pook is quick to point out that this success is completely hollow, and more importantly, it's incredibly fragile.
Yeah, it falls apart so easily.
Exactly. The young man quickly realizes he is trapped by Manuel. Because think about it, what happens when the woman goes off script?
Right. What if she says something that isn't in the book?
Yes. What happens when she does something that isn't covered in Chapter 4 of the manual? The man just panics. His cognitive load is so entirely taken up by trying to remember all the rules that he isn't actually present in the interaction at all.
He's not even listening to her.
No, he has no internal compass. He's just, running a software program.
Yeah.
And when he hits an unexpected variable, the whole system just crashes.
It's exactly like someone trying to become a legendary jazz musician by, strictly painting by numbers.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, you might hit the right notes in the right sequence. Technically, yes, you are playing the song. But anyone listening can feel that there is absolutely no soul in it.
Yeah, it feels dead.
Exactly. You're reading sheet music in your head instead of actually feeling the rhythm of the room. And the audience, or in this case the woman, she can sense the gears turning in your head.
And that's the exact mechanism Pook is diagnosing here. It's the cognitive friction of pretending to be someone you aren't.
Right.
Pook argues that women possess this highly tuned social radar for incongruence. If your words are saying, hey, I'm a confident, high-status man, but your internal monologue is frantically searching some mental PDF for the next line to say, that incongruence just leaks out.
Yeah, it's totally obvious.
So Pook's thesis is that true success requires basically throwing Manuel in the trash. The mindset of success has to be internalized so deeply that it becomes natural. You can't just act like a hero. You have to actually adopt the psychology of one.
Okay, but, and this is what we need to ask, if these highly engineered PUA tactics are just a Band-Aid, what is the underlying wound? Like, Pook spends a massive portion of the text explaining why these guys needed a manual in the first place.
Right, what was broken?
Yeah. What was their default state that was feeling so miserably?
Well, the default state, according to Pook, is the pursuit of flawless, idealized perfection.
Perfectionism.
Yes. The text claims men fail initially because they have been culturally conditioned to be the ultimate, unproblematic, nice guy.
Ah, the nice guy.
Right. They're actively suppressing every ounce of their actual humanity to present this completely sterilized, perfectly agreeable facade. And Pook counters this with one of his most famous maxims in the text, perfect is boring.
Perfect is boring. And Pook tries this home with a really vivid example. He uses a reality TV dating show.
Oh, yeah, the dating show example.
Yeah, so you have this controlled environment, right, with two very different guys competing for the same women. Guy number one is the polished, perfect player. He never interrupts. He remembers every single tiny detail she says.
He compliments her flawlessly.
Flawlessly. He is the walking embodiment of absolutely everything society tells a man he should be to win a woman's affection.
Right, he's playing it incredibly safe. I mean, he is basically eliminating all risk from his behavior.
Exactly. And then you have guy number two. Pook describes this guy as loud, completely wild, and totally unpredictable.
Yeah, he says he's acting like a toddler.
He's practically a toddler, splashing around the pool. He's breaking all the rules of decorum. He's obnoxious. He's teasing them. He's taking up way too much space.
And the really brilliant part of this observation is a contrast between the women's stated reactions and their actual choices.
Right, what they say versus what they do.
Exactly. The women on the show verbally complain about the wild guy. They go straight to the perfect guy and they say, oh, we are so relieved you're here. That other guy is a menace. He literally acts like a 2-year-old.
And the perfect guy eats this up.
Oh, it completely feeds his ego. He thinks his strategy of flawless compliance is working perfectly.
But then, when the actual elimination ceremony happens, when they have to choose who they actually want to spend their time with, they pick the wild, splashing toddler guy.
Every time.
And the perfect guy is just left standing there, completely stunned, his entire worldview shattered. Pook argues this happens because perfection is just inherently lifeless.
Yeah, think about the neuropsychology of attraction for a second here. Attraction thrives on tension.
Right.
It thrives on a slight sense of unpredictability because that's what spikes dopamine. When a man strives to be perfect, he scrubs away all of his friction. He scrubs away his quirks, his edge, his raw energy.
He makes himself totally smooth.
Exactly. And if you are entirely predictable, you generate zero emotional spikes. Pook actually compares this to a highly successful corporate lawyer.
Oh man, the lawyer example is brutal. Pook describes this guy who has done absolutely everything by the book. He has the perfect house in the suburbs, the luxury car, the perfectly sculpted gym body, the high-status job,
He is the pure provider.
the ultimate provider. And yet his wife cheats on him. And Pook says, of course she did, because he is overwhelmingly, suffocatingly boring.
Yeah.
He has sterilized his entire existence just to fit into this societal mold of the quote-unquote perfect husband. And in the process, he completely killed his own masculine vitality.
Which honestly perfectly explains Pook's analysis of the friend zone.
Oh, right. Let's get into that.
Yeah, in Lesson 2 of the text, Pook breaks down exactly why the nice guy inevitably ends up categorized as just a platonic friend. He argues it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human bonding mechanisms.
Right. Pook claims that men and women bond in entirely different ways. Like men, he argues, bond side by side.
Through shared action.
Through shared action, yeah. They play sports, they work on cars together, they build things, or they just sit next to each other staring at a screen or a game.
Right.
But women, conversely, bond face to face. They bond through emotional disclosure, through sharing secrets, talking about their feelings, dissecting their relationships.
So if you follow the logic here, if a man operates under the nice guy paradigm, he thinks the way to a woman's heart is to be her ultimate emotional support system.
He wants to be the best listener.
Exactly. He sits there for 3 hours face to face, acting as a sounding board while she complains about her ex-boyfriends. He analyzes her feelings. He genuinely thinks he is earning romantic equity by being a quote-unquote great listener.
But Pook says he is actively shooting himself in the foot here, because by mirroring her method of bonding, by sitting face to face and processing emotions, he is literally demonstrating female-style platonic bonding.
Right. He is acting like her girlfriend.
Exactly. And Pook argues that you simply cannot generate romantic, polarized attraction while occupying a platonic female bonding role.
He just can't.
Now, wait a minute, though. Let's look critically at this for a second. If the text says that being a supportive listener puts you in the friend zone, and that women actually choose the obnoxious guy splashing in the pool, I mean, isn't Pook just giving men a free pass to be cruel?
It does sound like that.
Yeah, it sounds like he's basically saying the secret to attraction is just ignoring people, disrespecting their feelings, and just acting like a jerk.
It absolutely sounds like that on the surface. And that's a very, very common critique of this entire era of internet philosophy. But if you drill down into the mechanics of what Pook is actually advocating, it's not about cruelty at all.
Okay, so what is it about?
Well, the text makes a really sharp distinction between being a malicious person and what it calls the jerk. Pook argues that the nice guy is actually the one who is covertly manipulative.
Wait, how so? How is the nice guy manipulative?
Because the nice guy is suppressing his true desires just to extract a result. I mean, he doesn't actually want to sit there for 3 hours listening to her complain about another man.
Right, he's probably bored out of his mind.
Exactly. But he does it anyway because he has this covert contract running in his head. If I listen to this, she will owe me intimacy.
Ah.
And Pook says women possess a subconscious radar for this underlying dishonesty. It feels transactional. It feels needy.
Okay, so then what is the jerk in Pook's framework?
The jerk is simply a man who refuses to compromise his own reality. He won't suppress his own desires just to appease someone else. He possesses unapologetic boundaries.
So it's about boundaries.
Yes. For example, if a woman asks the jerk to go to a 3-hour modern art exhibit that he has zero interest in, he doesn't pretend to love art just to win points with her.
Right.
He just says, I hate modern art. I'm going to play pool. You can come if you want.
And Pook argues the woman will actually be more attracted to the guy going to play pool. Not because he rejected her idea or because he was mean, but because he is an authentic, defined entity.
Exactly.
He isn't like a chameleon shifting his colors to match her background. He actually has his own background.
Precisely. And this lack of a defined self in the nice guy, it leads to another massive psychological trap that Pook talks about. When a man doesn't have his own solid reality, he tends to completely unmoor himself and project absolute perfection onto the woman he desires.
Oh, this leads right into the metaphors.
Yes. This is where Pook introduces his most famous metaphors, the golden statue and the Sphinx.
The golden statue imagery in Lesson 3 is just incredibly cinematic. I mean, Pook asks the reader to imagine this massive, sprawling valley. And at the bottom of this valley, there are thousands of men just throwing themselves at the base of a giant golden statue of a woman.
Just worshiping it.
Worshipping it. They are sacrificing their time, their money, their dignity. They're bringing offerings, writing terrible poetry, bowing down, and essentially begging the statue to just acknowledge them.
It is the ultimate metaphor for idealization. And Pook uses this term AFC.
Right, the average frustrated chump.
Exactly. He uses AFC to describe these men. The AFC does not see a flawed biological human being standing in front of him. His insecurity and his societal conditioning just force him to elevate her to a literal goddess.
And you can't have a normal conversation with a goddess.
No. When you view someone as a goddess, you cannot interact with them naturally. You interact with them through this weird lens of terror and reverence.
Which feeds perfectly into the next metaphor, the Sphinx. Now, in mythology, right, the Sphinx is this terrifying mystical creature that presents you with a complex riddle.
And if you fail...
If you fail to answer the riddle, it devours you. And Pook argues that AFCs view women as the Sphinx.
Right. Let's look at the mechanism of why men do this. When a woman behaves in a way that is confusing or rejecting, say, she flakes on a date at the last minute, or she just gives wildly mixed signals, the AFC cannot process that she might just be flaky or just uninterested.
His ego can't handle it.
Exactly, his ego can't handle it. So to protect his ego, he projects the image of the Sphinx onto her.
Right. He rationalizes the behavior by basically convincing himself that it's part of a grand, complex mystery. He thinks, she didn't flake because she doesn't care. She flaked because our connection is so intense that it intimidated her, and she is just testing my resolve to see if I am truly worthy of her love.
Exactly. He literally writes an entire fantasy novel in his head just to explain away a simple text message.
That's wild.
But Pook delivers this massive paradigm-shifting punchline here. He says the answer to the riddle of the Sphinx is that there is no riddle.
There is no mystical test. She isn't operating on some higher cosmic plane. If she flakes, it's just because she didn't want to go.
Pook is absolutely brutal about this. He forces the reader to strip away the mythological projection. He tells men that their overly active imaginations are actually their own worst enemy. The woman is not a deity testing your soul. She is just a regular person navigating her own life.
Oh, wait, let's unpack this for a second. Isn't Pook's no riddle concept incredibly dismissive of women's actual complexity?
I mean, yes, it feels like it reduces women to these incredibly simple, almost two-dimensional background characters in the man's journey. It's like he's saying, oh, don't bother trying to understand her deep emotions. She doesn't have any.
It's just a very sharp critique.
Right.
And it's one that modern analysts of this red pill space often make. It can absolutely foster a very dismissive attitude.
Yeah.
But if we, play devil's advocate for a moment and look at the utility of this belief for the intended audience, which is the deeply anxious, completely paralyzed young man back in 2004, this concept wasn't necessarily meant to insult women.
So what was it meant to do?
It was meant to be an emergency brake on the man's crippling overanalysis. The AFC is just drowning in his own obsessive thoughts. Telling him there is no riddle isn't necessarily meant to be an objective truth about female psychology. It is a required psychological intervention to stop the man from obsessing over every microexpression and just live his life.
Okay, that makes sense. And to implement this intervention, Pook introduces a very practical structural fix for this obsession. He calls it the wall of screens analogy. Oh, this targets the concept of scarcity versus abundance mindsets perfectly.
Yeah.
Pook says, imagine a man sitting in a dark room with a massive wall of television screens. If only one of those screens is turned on, meaning he only has one woman in his life that he is romantically interested in, what is going to happen?
He is going to stare at that one screen with absolute terrifying intensity. He will analyze every single flicker of the pixels. If the screen goes even slightly dim, his cortisol levels will spike.
He will completely panic.
He'll panic.
Yeah.
Because that one screen represents his entire potential for romantic success. And Pook argues that this scarcity inevitably forces a man to act needy and desperate. He will start treating a woman he's gone on 2 dates with as if they were sitting down negotiating a 30-year mortgage.
And honestly, the neuropsychology backs this up. When you operate from a position of absolute scarcity, your brain treats any potential loss as a literal survival threat.
Right, flight or fight.
Exactly. You lose your ability to be playful or detached because the stakes just feel impossibly high. So Pook's solution is very blunt. Turn on more screens.
Right. He tells men they literally must date multiple women simultaneously. Having a backup or multiple options forces the brain out of that scarcity panic.
Yes.
If one screen goes dark, if one woman flakes on a date, you don't sit there and write a fantasy novel about the Sphinx. You just shift your gaze to a different screen that is still broadcasting.
It naturally engineers detachment.
Exactly. You retain your self-respect because your emotional baseline isn't completely tethered to a single point of failure.
Right.
But practically speaking, this feels like a massive catch-22.
How so?
Well, Pook is telling the chronically anxious, socially terrified AFC that the cure to his anxiety is to just get more options. That's like telling someone having a panic attack about their finances to just go make $1 million.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
If a guy lacks the confidence to talk to one woman, how on earth is he supposed to generate an entire wall of screams?
You've hit the exact wall that purely psychological dating advice always runs into. You simply cannot outthink an anxious attachment style purely through willpower.
You just can't.
And what's fascinating is that Pook actually recognizes this limitation. This is really the pivot point of the entire text. Pook realizes that telling men to just be detached doesn't work. So he abandons psychology entirely and dives headfirst into biological determinism.
Yes. This is where we cross the Rubicon into the most controversial, intensely biologically essentialist part of the source material. Pook completely shifts the paradigm here. He stops talking about mindset and starts talking about endocrinology.
Right. He makes the core argument that the jerk behavior we discussed earlier, the boundary setting, the unapologetic confidence, the complete lack of a social filter, is not a psychological framework you can just memorize.
Right.
He claims it is a direct physiological symptom of high testosterone.
Pook is literally arguing that beautiful women aren't attracted to mean guys. They are biologically hardwired to respond to extreme masculinity. And extreme masculinity, in his view, is purely a function of hormones.
Yes.
He essentially attempts to build a scientific case for this, and he walks the reader through several highly specific examples.
Let's unpack the examples he uses to build this worldview, because he casts a really wide net here.
He really does.
He starts with this medical anecdote about an HIV patient. According to Pook's source, this patient was suffering from severe muscle wasting and profound depression. The doctors prescribed high-dose testosterone injections just to help him retain muscle mass.
Right. And the text details this radical behavioral transformation. The patient goes from being lethargic, deeply withdrawn, and super socially anxious to suddenly being hyper-aggressive, fiercely confident, and overwhelmingly sexual.
Yeah.
Pook uses this to argue that personality isn't just in the mind, it's heavily dictated by the chemical soup of the body. Like, you change the chemicals, you completely overwrite the personality.
Exactly. Then Pook moves into evolutionary biology and animal studies to reinforce the point.
Oh, the animal studies.
Yeah, he cites studies involving female mice that were injected with testosterone, noting that they actually began exhibiting male dominance behaviors.
Up to the point of anatomical changes, right?
Yes, and attempting to mate with other females. He also points to the zebra finch, which is a bird where typically only the males sing to attract mates. When scientists gave testosterone to the female finches, they spontaneously began singing the male songs.
He even brings up hyena pack dynamics, noting that in their matriarchal structure, the dominant alpha females leading the pack actually possess higher circulating testosterone levels than the subordinate males.
It's just this relentless stacking of biological evidence, and then he applies this directly to human sociology. Pook makes these sweeping, generalized claims about societal structure.
Very sweeping.
He argues that blue-collar workers who spend their days engaged in heavy physical labor naturally maintain higher testosterone levels than white-collar workers who are just sitting in cubicles under fluorescent lights all day.
He even goes as far as to claim that prison populations, specifically violent criminals, have significantly higher testosterone than corporate businessmen.
Right.
Pook's underlying thesis here is that testosterone naturally promotes risk-taking, physical dominance, and a complete biological disregard for social niceties. It makes a man impervious to the judgment of the herd.
So how does Pook actually apply this to the reader? How does the guy sitting at home, terrified of rejection, utilize this information?
Right. What's the practical application?
Well, Pook delivers what is perhaps the most famous, deeply personal narrative in the entire text. The story of the skinny guy's physical transformation.
This story is wild.
Yeah.
Because it reads exactly like an RPG video game leveling system, but applied to human biology.
It really does.
The author describes his baseline state as a tall, incredibly skinny guy, weighing exactly 70 kilograms, which is about 154 pounds. At this baseline weight, he notes his social reality. He is entirely invisible to highly attractive women. He claims that only women he deems unattractive or severely overweight would ever even initiate interaction with him.
So he's establishing his baseline lack of biological presence.
Right.
And so he decides to completely alter his physical reality. He begins this aggressive regimen of heavy weightlifting and massive caloric intake. He starts to bulk up. And the text meticulously tracks how his reception by women shifts at specific weight tiers.
It's so granular. Like at 74 kilos, he notices the dynamic shift slightly. The unattractive women start to back off, and quote-unquote average girls begin making eye contact.
Okay, so he keeps lifting.
He keeps lifting. At 79 kilos, he starts getting comments from coworkers asking why a guy like him doesn't have a girlfriend. Pretty girls, the sweet girl next door types, start actively wanting to talk to him.
He's slowly climbing the biological hierarchy. Then he hits the 83 to 88 kilogram tier. He is now approaching 195 pounds of solid muscle.
A big guy.
Very big. He writes that at this tier, average girls recognize he's completely out of their league and they don't even try. Pretty girls want to be his friend. But the truly beautiful women, the women who previously wouldn't even look his way, they start actively pursuing him.
But the real climax of the story happens when he hits exactly 92 kilograms. Roughly 202 pounds of heavily muscled mass. At this exact tier, something paradoxical happens. The attention from regular, average, and even pretty women actually drops off completely.
And why is that?
Because he claims they become physically intimidated by him. His presence is just too overwhelming. They are genuinely scared of him.
But the absolute top tier, quote unquote, gorgeous women, the women who are used to having dozens of average guys orbiting them and groveling at their feet, these women start throwing themselves at him.
And Pook makes sure to clarify that this is not just about aesthetics. It's not about having a nice six-pack for the beach. He argues that to maintain 92 kilograms of muscle on a frame that naturally wants to be 70 kilograms, the male body is forced to constantly produce and pump incredibly high levels of testosterone.
Right.
And here's the craziest claim in the text. Pook argues that women can metaphorically, or perhaps even literally via pheromones, smell this testosterone radiating off him.
Yes, he is claiming that the massive muscle mass is basically a biological billboard broadcasting a neurochemical reality. The women aren't reacting to his witty banter, they are reacting to the invisible chemical cloud of dominance he is emitting.
I have to pause here.
Yeah.
Because we are looking at a framework that reduces all the nuance of human romance, all the poetry of connection, to a literal National Geographic documentary.
Pretty much.
It reduces complex human emotion to chemical equations and animal pack dynamics. It's essentially saying, build muscle, generate testosterone, emit a pheromone, and the female of the species will present herself for mating. It is the definition of extreme biological reductionism.
It is entirely reductionist. I mean, it strips away all sociology, all individual personality, and all higher level cognition.
Completely.
But again, if we look at why Pook is doing this, we see the brilliance of his strategy for his specific audience. For a man who is crippled by overthinking, who analyzes every single text message for hidden meaning, who thinks he is fundamentally broken because he can't figure out the right NLP script to use.
Right.
This extreme biological determinism is deeply, profoundly comforting.
Oh, because it gives him an internal locus of control.
Exactly. If attraction is just a chemical reaction to physical dominance, it means the man isn't socially defective. He hasn't failed some grand cosmic test. He just literally hasn't pulled the right biological levers yet.
Right, it's just mechanics.
Yes. If he believes this framework, he stops worrying about saying the perfect poetic sentence. He stops agonizing over whether his personality is good enough. He stops trying to read the Sphinx's riddle because he realizes there is no riddle. There is only biology.
It's a mechanism to force men out of their own heads and into their physical bodies, which sets up the final overarching ideological pillar of Pook's entire philosophy.
Right, the final piece.
Once a man has stopped trying to be perfect, stopped projecting the Sphinx, and embraced his biological reality, what is his actual state of being? Pook calls it the fountain of youth.
This is Pook's grand thesis on the tragedy of male socialization. He argues that as men grow up, they are indoctrinated into seriousness.
They get boring.
Yeah, they get corporate jobs, they pay taxes, they watch the news, they read heavy philosophy, they become responsible, logical, and deeply serious. And Pook asserts that this accumulated seriousness is a disease that completely kills their raw, natural sexuality.
Pook makes this incredibly provocative observation here. He claims that every single man listening to his words was, at one point in his life, a perfect, undeniable Don Juan.
A master of romance.
An absolute master of female psychology. And that point was when he was exactly 6 years old, playing on the playground.
Think about the pure behavioral mechanics of a 6-year-old boy. Little boys do not walk up to girls and ask for permission to play.
No, they don't.
They do not agonize in the corner, wondering if they are worthy of the girl's time. They just sprint onto the playground, set the rules of the game, and fully assume the girl will want to join in.
And look at the nature of their interactions. Little boys don't take little girls on boring, seated dinner dates where they stare at each other across a table and discuss the socioeconomic climate or their 5-year career goals.
Definitely not.
What do? They throw bugs at them, they pull their hair, they play tag, they push them on the swings. The interaction is entirely physical, entirely kinetic, and entirely based on teasing. It's fun.
Pook explicitly advises adult men to stop treating women like interviewers or judges and to start bringing that exact same unbridled playground energy to their dates.
Just unhinged fun.
Right. If you take a woman to a quiet coffee shop and interrogate her about her job for 2 hours, you are generating zero dopamine. You are just engaging her logical brain.
Right, you're back to being face-to-face friends.
Exactly. Pook says you should take her rock climbing, take her to an amusement park, go bowling. You should be physically racing her, teasing her, pushing her boundaries in a fun way.
Yeah.
You have to induce the kinetic joy of childhood.
It's a massive rejection of intellectualism.
Yeah.
I mean, Pook has this deeply anti-intellectual stance when it comes to romance. He actively argues that reading too much philosophy or studying heavy political theory or obsessing over societal structures literally pollutes the male mind.
It weighs them down.
It makes a man heavy, melancholic, and overwhelmingly boring to be around.
The text claims that women who have their own anxieties and societal pressures do not want to date a gloomy, brooding philosopher who wants to debate existentialism over dinner.
They want an escape.
They want a release from their own heavy thoughts. The man who has drank from the fountain of youth provides that release because he treats life like a massive, simple, fun game.
So, the ultimate secret to romance, according to this foundational text that literally shaped internet dating culture for 2 decades, is to basically act like a 7-year-old who just drank 3 Red Bulls.
I mean, it sounds absurd when you put it like that, but the core psychological truth Pook is aiming at is the reclamation of unpretentious joy.
Unpretentious joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about spontaneity. It's about developing this unapologetic self-interest where your primary goal when you leave the house is just to have a good time yourself.
You're not performing.
Right, you aren't trying to engineer a good time for her. You are having fun, and you simply invite her to tag along in your reality. It is the ultimate rejection of the nice guy who is constantly auditing his own behavior to make sure he is earning his keep.
So bringing all these threads together, let's summarize the architecture of this deep dive. The source material we've unpacked today, Pook and Katabi, represents a massive tectonic paradigm shift in the history of male self-help.
A total shift.
It was a complete violent rejection of the idea of emotional vulnerability and the sterilized nice guy ideal. It also threw out the mechanical, robotic NLP scripts and rigid pickup lines of the mainstream PUA community.
Instead, it championed a totally unapologetic biological essentialism. It gave lonely men a new framework, that raw, testosterone-driven action, rigid boundary setting, and a return to the playful, kinetic, selfish energy of childhood were the true, undeniable drivers of human attraction.
Right?
It ordered men to stop worshiping women as golden statues, to stop trying to solve the non-existent riddle of the Sphinx, and to simply become undeniable physical forces of nature.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly paradoxical thought to ponder as we close out. Something for you to mull over that builds on everything Pook argues, but maybe turns the camera back on the reader.
I like this.
Pook claims over and over that perfect is boring. He argues that raw, unpredictable, unapologetic humanity is the only thing that truly creates organic attraction.
He wants men to burn Manuel's rulebook, to escape the script completely.
Right. But think about the guy we talked about at the very beginning. If a man reads this text and then he deliberately tries to act flawed, deliberately forces himself to act raw, obsessively counts his macros to hit exactly 92 kilos just to emit the right pheromones, and mathematically plans out bowling dates just so he can perfectly mimic the energy of a 7-year-old boy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Aren't they just playing a much more complicated, exhausting game of perfection? In trying so desperately to escape Manuel's script, did Pook just write a brand new, even heavier script for his followers to obsess over?
That is the ultimate paradox of self-improvement. You cannot manufacture genuine authenticity. The absolute second you strategize your spontaneity, you're back in the matrix.
Right.
You are just running a more advanced software program.
It's a fascinating look at the lengths human beings will go to and the philosophies we will build just to find a reliable formula for connection. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the foundational texts of the early internet. Keep questioning the architecture of the information you encounter. Keep looking for the underlying why, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.